Thank you, Rob, and thanks everyone for attending this session on Info Explorer 2014. I'm going to whiz through the new features over 2013, but mainly concentrate on WriteBack, which is the main new feature that we put into Info Explorer 2014. So what I have open in front of me is an example GL cube, which shows me my actual and budget for a particular fiscal year. So this particular cube was designed only to have one financial year in, and the financial year is a parameter when you run the cube. So I can see my accounts currently looking at budget, but I could turn on actual and budget and see both actual and budget per period. But just to keep my view simple, I'll just go back and just look at budget only. So those of you who are very familiar with 2013 will notice one of the, we've done a few more usability type features. For example, we now label the actual fact in blue as opposed to the dimensions, which are in black. So if you have 10 or 15 dimensions and 4 facts, it's very easy to find your facts and drag them down into the displayed area and the available area, which is also, we've labeled these two now, so it's more clear what these different sections are. Similarly, on a right-hand mouse button, we've put icons to show which of the areas that we're hiding, and these icons are all available from the display ribbon as well. So if it's a little bit subtle to go right-hand mouse button and hide the display fields area, you can just go and hide the display fields area from here. So quite a few people weren't aware of the right-hand mouse button functionality, but you can now do a lot of the hide and display from the actual new ribbon called display. For example, if I wanted to hide the tree and hide all this information, you can eventually end up with a full screen really, which is data only. And this is largely designed for people who want to have a full screen view of a particular view, maybe projected onto the screen. And you can now also set cubes to refresh every minute or every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes. And if you are running in that mode, you will have a counter down here saying when it will next refresh. So you can use it as a live dashboard during the day. But just let me get back to where I was. So we've also included some of the other functionality that was only available on the right-hand mouse button up on the view toolbar to make it easier to get at. For example, editing the fields, changing your captions, or adding a new field, editing the styles either of the whole cube or of an individual cube, and editing the pre-filter, which filters the underlying records that we're seeing. They're still all available on the right-hand mouse button as well, if that's how you're used to working with them. But we've just included the icons to make them visually quicker to find once you know what the icon looks like. So now on to work sets, which we've included in Info Explorer. So in Info Explorer, you get 2 versions of the license. There's normal Info Explorer, which allows you to refresh your cubes, drag and drop your rows and columns, filter, add new facts, and analyze the data in general. And then the second form of license is with the ability to create work sets. And work sets are designed to assist you in making what-if scenarios or creating a budget figure, being able to view that budget against your actuals and see the total effect on the bottom line, as it were. And then once you're happy with those budgets, if you want to, you can always keep them in your cube. You can refresh a cube which has got a work set in and get new actuals to flow in. But the work set would remain as you calculated it or as you entered it from the last time you saved that cube. But if you do want those figures to go back into ACPAC, for example, where you're working on a GL budget, which I am here, I would want to write it back into one of the fiscal sets in the GL budget. You've got budget sets 1, 2, 5, depending what version of Sage 300 you're running. And we also allow you to write back into the IC item forecast area, so where you can enter your minimum quantities, your maximum quantities, and your projected sales in IC. We allow you to write back into that projected sales area if you want to use the cube to create your projected sales for the next year. And we also allow you to write back into Information Manager's info sets, which is the module which we used to call supplementary data, but we now call optional tables. So that's the ability to create tables, as it were, in ACPAC linked to any ACPAC view or combination of ACPAC views up to 10 keys. And the example that's in your sample data is a customer item budget. So where you want to budget your margin, for example, your quantity and your sales value for every customer item combination for a fiscal year and period. So it's not easy to do that in the current optional tables structure. It would be very difficult to store that kind of information. But the advantage of storing it in supplementary data is it's now available for reporting actual versus budget in either in Crystal or we would recommend in Info Explorer. So I'm going to go and create myself a work set based on my actual and budget data of this particular GL, which is the year 2020 of SAM Ltd. So on the work sets tab, I can say create a new work set. So basically what creating a new work set does, it takes a copy of the data that you have and labels it, in this case work set 1, which you can rename. So this is going to be my estimate 1. And at this stage, I can have as many work sets as I want, and I select here which one I'm currently working on. So at this stage, I could say, well, my sales, I don't think my sales for the period 1 for this account is going to be minus 8 million. Let me just do one more thing. This is actually this particular figure is actually a total of 3 accounts which have been posted to, including my region and including my division. So if I was to drag my full account number down, I would see that that 827 is really the sum of those 3. So let's just turn on our totals. So similarly to the hide and show areas, we've also got the row totals and column totals, which you can also do from here, but you can turn them on from the display tab as well. So I'm just going to include row totals. So I see this 827. And I've got my column totals on, so that's good. So, so for example, if I thought, well, for this region and for this entity, or I'm not sure if that's division, it's actually going to be minus 200,000. I could just simply key over that number. And when I press enter, all the totals will recalculate through based on that new number. I could apply a style to my work set, where any amended number was made a particular color, so you could quickly, at a glance, see all your red fields or all your pink fields or whatever color you choose are ones you've actually amended, as opposed to, those were part of the original work set when you created it. So I could go ahead and change my budgets as I saw fit, or I could say you can change at a total level. So for example, if I was to change this 800,000 to maybe minus 100,000 or 10, whatever, and when I press enter, it's now going to prorate that amount back to the children that make that up. But the reason it did that equal proration is my method of spreading, my spread method, was set as evenly. But what I could have done is spread it proportionately, or I could update all the minimum values that are part of this total, or I could set the maximum values only. I could set it to an average, or I could have done a percentage increase or decrease. So instead of typing in that 100,000, I could have said minus 10 and use percentage increase, or plus 10 and it would increase it by 10%. Or you can do an absolute dollar value percentage increase or decrease. So let's look at changing this particular number, and instead of as my spreading method being evenly, I'm going to choose proportionately. And proportionately means based on another account or another spread that you want to spread that value. So if I did it proportionately based on my current sale value, then it's going to proportionately spread it based on 189, 385, 310. But what I could do is proportionately spread this change based on any other account value for February of the year 2020. Or I could say, no, don't do the same year. I could say change my fiscal year, don't match it, don't make it 2020. If I had 2019's actuals in here, I could say base it on 2019's actuals, or I could say base it on 2020's, but change the version to actuals. So my spread would now be based on the actuals in those accounts for February 2020. So let's go ahead and do that, and let's change this to minus 20, say, or 2 million, whatever I typed, and now it's spread that based on my spread of actuals for 2020. But as I'm changing these figures at a total level, and here I'm just doing one account, 1 month, I could, for example, change it at a total level for the whole year. So I could change that 24 million to minus 30 million. And I'm still spreading based on actuals. So you may or may not get a spread of data through here, depending what your actuals are. And when I go enter, it would spread that through based on actuals. If I had spread on budget, these would have also remained 0 because they were 0 in the first place. But if I was to come and change maybe this revenue total, so I don't need to be working just on an account or a detailed account or an account roll-up, as it were. I could also work at an account group level, or in fact, I could work at your whatever total that you have available on the screen. So I could change this from minus 21 million to minus 30 million, let's say. And this time, I'm not going to spread it based on my actual. I'm going to spread it based on my budget. And I should have done that minus, shouldn't I? And that would then spread through and spread that through the whole budget that I have proportionately to what I have. So if I was to go ahead and save this cube now, it's going to save all these work sets, all these work set figures. If I was to go back and on my Home tab refresh this, it would re-refresh the actual data based on what I have in ACPAC now. So any new GL postings since I last refreshed. In this case, I last refreshed on the 1st of October, so I'd be getting some of my October and November figures coming in, but the work set remains intact as what you've keyed it in here. And if I was to save this cube and somebody else was to open up this cube, they would, as long as they had a work set license, they would also see these figures. And if they had the security, because you can put security on who can type in work set numbers and who can update from a work set. So as long as they pass that security, they could change these figures and send back maybe a revised budget for me to have a look at. But at some point in time, you're going to be happy with these figures and you actually want to pass them back into the GL. And all you need to do is write back these particular figures. So if I click write back now, it's just prompting me for the parameters, which is indirectly included in the write back. And when you update that, it will go and write those however many 696 rows written back into my fiscal set 1. So my cube at the moment is set up to write back into my fiscal set 1. And to see where your write back is happening to, because this is within your control to change it, on the properties of the cube, what you have now is the ability to write back. So a little bit of help on how you do the write back, and then per fact, because I might have 2 facts in here, and I can write each fact back to a different GL budget set, for example, or that doesn't really make sense in this case, but if I was doing an info set update where I had 3 facts in my info set, like budgeted quantity, budgeted cost, and budgeted margin, then I can have a separate write back for each one. And your write back is really a SQL statement. So this is really what is being run to update the budget. And it's updating the GLAFS, which is the table which has the budget in. And it's setting it's working out which column it is based on which month it is. And it's writing back using the unformatted account that we have in the cube. The fiscal year was the parameter we were talking about, and the fiscal currency it needs to be set as a parameter in the query. So in this particular case, these are the hard-coded, as it were, that I'm using currency of CAD. I'm using my fiscal designator as 1, and my type is functional. So if I wanted to change this to work on a US dollar database and to update budget set 2, I would change that to say USD. I would change that to say 2, and then save this. And next time I clicked update, it would go into fiscal set 2. That's why are we updating through SQL and not through the views? So it was a conscious decision because of speed. It's quite slow inserting into ACPAC using the views, and so we thought, if you've got a couple of thousand budget figures to update, it would take, depending on the speed of that machine, a couple of minutes to update that. Whereas it will take a couple of seconds to update this way. So, and because of that, because we're not using the views, we also don't allow you to insert any records. So to avoid any problems that you insert records with the wrong GL account, for example. So the premise behind this is you would have initially created your budget even though all the figures were 0, but you need to import a 0 budget or do something to create the budget records for those accounts that you do on a budget. And then when you refresh this cube, we will only have budget records for those particular ones that you have initialized in some way in ACPAC, and those are the only ones we can update. So you cannot insert a record, you can only update a record, and it's updating a record that's already been created. So the risks are very low, really, in terms of not using the views to do those updates. So that's an example of my of updating the GL. I'm just going to open up a second example of a work set to allow us to do the item forecast.
And can you take a question at this time?
Yeah, sure.
How can multiple users update the budgets at the same time?
Well, they can't. So you're updating a budget in a cube, and while you're updating the budget in this particular cube, you're the only one who can see that data. And when I click right back, unless I send somebody that cube or make that cube available for somebody else to open, nobody will see that unless they open up the cube until they click write back. As soon as they write back into ACPAC, then it's obviously going to be sitting in your whichever fiscal designator you're updating, and then everybody else can see that. But if that question came from the point of view, let's say I'm the departmental manager of Department 01, and you're the departmental manager of 02, then we can have 2 cubes, one with 01's data in, another one with 02's data in, and they can both be entering their own budget. Obviously, they can't see the effect of the other's budget until they have written back and you have refreshed your cube. But I could have Department Manager 01 entering their figures and updating from one cube, and Department Manager 02 entering their figures and updating from there. So if that's what was underlying your question, you've got 2 people updating different areas at the same time, then yes, you would have 2 cubes and they can both be updating. If they were both updating the same department, O1, they were both changing the figures for O1, then yes, it could happen. They could both be updating GL budgets at the same time, but the last person to click right back, their figures would be the ones that get written back. And the only thing that gets written back is not this full work set. It's just the figures that you've changed. So if I've changed this account only, then it will just write back that value. It only writes back the amended values. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. And then a follow-up question, how does it cope with multiple companies?
How does it cope with multiple companies? Well, to have multiple companies' budgets in here, there's two ways you can do it. One is through a union of the two GL-AFS tables to present it as one, or you would have two queries. So you could only support updating multiple GL budgets from multiple companies at the same time if your initial, I'll just go to the properties, if my initial, so this would say GL budget from SAM Ltd, and I'd have a second cube here, GL budget from SAM Inc. And then if I did have two queries in this cube, I'd actually have two cube names here, and within each cube you'd have write back, and within each cube write back you'd have a possibility of a write back statement per fact. So this would be a write back for SAM Ltd, and it would be using connection 1, and then you'd have a second connection for SAM Inc. This cube would be connected to that connection, and your write back would go into SAM Inc. So you can only update two GLs at the same time. Well, not at the same time, it would be two separate write back clicks if you had two different queries and two connections in the cube itself. You couldn't do it from a union clause, because a union clause only has one connection, which is one database. That's a good question. Who asked that? Okay. So I'll move on. I'll look at now at the item forecast. So this query has got the data from the IC table, which stores your projected sales, your minimum level, your maximum level, and your reorder quantity, which is used if you're doing purchase ordering to item forecast. So here is the item forecast that I have at the moment, and in the same way as creating a work set, I could say, let's go and create a work set, create a new work set. And again, I'm going to call this my estimate 1. And just as I could in the GL, I could go and change any one of these figures to change the quantity for period 5, the forecast projected sales quantity for period 5, or in the same way, I could change this 20,000 maybe to 60,000 and tell it to write back proportionately. So it's going to update all these figures. I think I need another 0. Update all those figures proportionately, adding up to 600,000 overall. And it's again, just like the GL side, we cannot create a forecast record here. So if you do not have an item that already has got a forecast record in IC, even if the forecast is all 0. So in this case, I could change this number, but I couldn't just enter a whole new item that's not in the original forecast underneath. So if you are going to use this for all items, then you do have to have an import to insert basically all the item records which are valid for you in this particular for the required location, and then you'll be able to update all those figures as you need. So this would be a good case where you should have actuals in here, maybe last year's actuals, and you could prorate this budget based on your last year's actuals, to get the seasonality spread. Or even this year's actuals for the first 6 months if you're in halfway through the year, and last year's actuals for the last 6 months. So again, we're updating the IC tables using a SQL statement. So on the properties of the, so in this case I've got a number of different facts that I could have re-estimated, but the only one that we have a query for is the projected sales, because that's the only one you can update from here. And we're updating that IC reorder table and setting the sales projected to the value that's been changed. And then it's just where the item number equals the item number and the period start. If you're familiar with those tables, they've all got a period start of 1900, I believe. So they're all, you always have a start date of 1900 in that particular table. But if you're using that table in any other way, you just need to change the SQL query, and it will still update through to that particular table. And finally, a little bit more complete an option is the customer item budget. So those of you who are familiar with our sample data, we have an info set which is keyed by AR customer and IC item. And in that particular info set, we enter the budgeted cost, the budgeted quantity, and the and the budgeted value. We don't do margin, we calculate margin, and the budgeted sales value. And you're aware that there's an add-in into Excel, which in a similar kind of formula to FRAMT in the financial reporter, we have an EB formula which allows you to take numbers from an Excel spreadsheet and write it back into that info set. But now we've extended into Info Explorer 2014 that you can write your budgeted figures, if they're being stored in an info set, back in from the cube. So for example, if I was to go and look at my item sales, and this is my, what am I looking at here? This is my net sales and my sales rank. So I could also pop down here my budgeted sales, let's say my budgeted cost, and my margin, budgeted margin. So let's say I was to look at those particular figures, or let's keep it simple. Let's just look at budget sales, and we will look at our year. So or our months, transaction months, and we will limit this to just look at one particular year. So I'm doing my budget for 2020. So there's my budgeted figures for those items across all the customers who I'm going to be budgeting for. So if I was to bring down the customer number, I could see that this particular item was made up of these customers being budgeted, and again by showing my row totals, I could change that 8510 to maybe 10,000 and increase according to my different spreading methods which customers are going to, which ones are increasing by that amount or percentage, spread back over current actuals, and then when I'm finished, write that back into our info set. So let's do that. Let's change this. I haven't created my write back yet. So again, create a new work set. Let's rename it Estimate 1. And now I should be able to double-click and change that to 10,000. And we won't spread it evenly. We'll do proportionately based on its own values. So that will up those, adding up to 10,000, do all the changes that I need to do, and write that back into the underlying info set. And as you would expect, the query is just a little bit more complicated, but on budgeted sales, there's the query which is now updating the EB info table, which some of you might know that is where we store the info set. So we're not generating a new key here. That record has to have existed before. So prior to the budget process for 2020, I would have imported either last year's actuals or however I wanted to start off the budget just to get those records generated. and that an import either through the ACPAC screen or through the info set, the Excel add-in, which creates info sets, that will go through the views. That will be quite slow if you've got thousands and thousands of records. But after that, to amend them and to do your final tweaking of the percentages, that will be fast done through the update. So that's what I had planned to show you. I can't think on the top of my head any other features that we put into. Yes, my favorite one. I found I quite often wanted to add up a group of figures, and like in Excel, you can highlight them and it gives you a little running total of those figures in the bottom right-hand side. So we've added that little box. I'm not sure, Rob, is it appearing on, because sometimes GoToMeeting doesn't show these sorts of pop-ups.
No, it shows the count of 3 and the sum of 26,000, yeah.
Yeah. So if you ever do want to just quickly add up what are these numbers less that 899, you can do that like you can in Excel. So that's a feature I often use but forget to tell people. So I'll open it up for questions if anyone has some additional questions.
Okay, we have one additional question here. Do we need to request new codes to enable the write back? And the quick answer to that, Dean, is yes. So
for your NFRs, obviously, just send us an email with your machine name. From Info Explorer, from within Info Explorer, you have the enter registration code. If you send us a screenshot of that, so we know what your company name, if there is one, what your computer name is, and we will send you a new activation code. So it's the same. Your existing activation codes will not include write back, so you will only have the home and display tabs, and you will not see the workset tab. So definitely send Sheena an email and ask for write back for your NFRs, and she'll send one off to you. And do it for all your demo machines, or if you're using it in-house, or all the machines that you need to be enabled for write back.
Yes.
And that's going to that menu reminds me. We no longer download the sample cubes as you install Info Explorer 2014, because what we found was people were leaving the cubes in that downloaded area, and if we made and they were setting them to their data, etc., and working with them from there. But if we reinstalled the programs, we were actually losing what changes they had done. So now we have a jump to a list of all the sample cubes that we have. And you can just click from there to download them. So the 3 sample writebacks are here on this download, and doing it this way as well also makes it easier for us to release one as we go without actually having people to download a new version of the programs to get the new sample cube. So keep an eye on this. As we add more ones, we will add them into here. And what's up and coming, hopefully, before Christmas, so we're going to do a sample purchase order cube and a sample IC cube.
And there was a question on pricing. So the base product without write back is $400 per workstation. And if you add the write back, it's another $400 per workstation. So it would be $800 for a workstation that had the base Info Explorer and also the write back functionality. It is possible for one customer to have a combination of the standard product and some people running the write back. It would just be a question of which license they're running on their workstation. And then that also begs the question as to whether you can run this on a server. Yes, you can. We have several clients that run Info Explorer under terminal services, and they share that one instance across multiple users. And in cases like that, we simply ask that you purchase the number of licenses based on the users within the organization that are accessing the cubes through that one server setup. We are recording this session today, so it will be available through either Dropbox, or we'll try to get it set up on a YouTube page that we've got set up for RL Associates. And assuming the voice quality or video and audio quality are nice, then we'll do that for you and post it, and we'll let you know that it's been posted so you can access it for other people in your organization, or if you would like to share that with clients and prospects. So if there are no other questions, we thank you very much for your time. We hope